Hi, I'm Casey Bloys. I'm the chairman and CEO of HBO and HBO Max content. I oversee all content development, production, marketing, everything that goes with it. The number one thing I'm asked, how did you get that job? And sometimes it's, how did you get that job? I didn't quite know what working in television meant or how you got these jobs. So I think when you tell someone what you do, it sounds like a really fun job, and it is. A lot of people make their way into this industry from different paths. Then I get a lot of questions about shows. Why did you cancel this show? Do you know the ending to that show? Usually very excited fans.
What are you doing? I faked an accent when we met, and now I have to commit.
Yes, Bucky, I am in love with Nate Jacobs, and he is in love with me.
You have a greater purpose than any of us could have ever imagined.
So what does it take to get a green light? What I say to the team sometimes is, who are we gonna call at 2 a.m. when there's a problem? Actors don't like the script they're reading, or a director has walked off set. Putting together a show is a big effort. A lot of things can go wrong, a lot of things do go wrong. So who am I betting on? Ideally, that person is so committed to the story that they wanna tell that they're gonna take all this and work on it and work through it. These shows are years of somebody's life and a lot of their creative energy. So you wanna make sure that they're 100% invested. I just want to make sure that there's a story there, there's a theme there that they're trying to get at, they're excited to do it. How does it fit into our larger slate at HBO or HBO Max? Does the creator have what it takes to take this all the way? Because it's not easy to get a show up and running. Issa Rae, Mike White, Craig Mazin, Jesse Armstrong, you work with people, you see what gets them excited. For example, with Craig, we had done Chernobyl with him. He's the one that brought us doing Last of Us. It wasn't like we went out saying, we gotta develop a video game and do the best adaptation. Craig wanted to do it, and because he was so excited, we're betting on Craig, not the video game. We're betting on him and his passion for it. Generally what you look for in a creator, you're creating not just a show, but an entire world. So Craig needs to know everything, and he had help from Neil Druckmann, who created the video game. So that was kind of a unique situation, but they know everything about this world. So if you ask Craig about, why would this character do this? Why does the story unfold this way? You want someone who is so invested in the world and knows why things happen, why they wouldn't happen, so you can have a real conversation. The more he knows about it, and the more excited he is, the better it is for us. One of the things you learn through experience is, if it's not on the page, if it's not in the script, it's probably not gonna get there. The couple of times where you kind of hope for the best, it's not quite there, but you wanna try something or you wanna do something, we keep coming back to, if it's not on the page, it's not gonna get there. So we focus a lot on the script. We focus a lot on getting it right. We do give notes, we do give feedback, because everything comes from the script. A great director can certainly elevate material. Actors, no question, will elevate material. But if you don't have the script, you're really at a disadvantage. So we really, really focus on that. In that process, the collaborative process between network and writer, 50% of the time they're right, 50% of the time we're right. What's more important is that you're having a conversation, and even if a writer doesn't agree with your notes, it makes them think about the script, the story, the character. Hopefully what network notes do is maybe help guide someone. Most creators, I would say, want the feedback. It matters how you deliver them. I think the worst thing you can do is go, I don't like that. How can I help this person kind of see what we're reading and get them to understand, maybe this would be a different way to do it, or that would be a different way to do it. One of the things notes can't be is prescriptive, meaning we can't tell them you should do this or you should do that. All we should do is say, here's the problem as we see it. And it's really up to the writer to say, okay, let me think about it. I could do this, I could do that, I could do that. I think where networks get in trouble is when you say, this isn't working, this is what you should do. It's about identifying the problem and then trusting them to figure it out. It can be helpful to know ultimately where you want a series to go. I think it's helpful for a writer to know that. Sometimes the creator knows the end, sometimes they don't. Writers will find it as they go. That's one of the, I think the joys of television is if you're starting season 1 and it's going to be an ongoing series, you don't necessarily have to figure that out. It can be helpful, but I've seen people do it lots of different ways. For example, House of the Dragon, if you read the history book that George writes, even forget that, if you watch Game of Thrones, you know what happens to the Targaryen dynasty, but the fun is going on the ride. We've been asking people to pay for HBO for a long time. We're not basic cable and we're not broadcast. You try things. Some of the things you think are going to work don't work, and some of the things you didn't think work really connect. So that will always be an element of this business that you can never predict. You kind of have to allow for that. If you spend a lot of money on a show, that show has to attract a lot of viewers, ratings, whatever you want to call that today. If something doesn't cost as much comparatively, you've got a little bit more leeway to be experimental and see how it goes, and if something is getting awards, great. The best case scenario is something hits with audiences, hits with critics, which is a good indicator of buzz, and does well in awards and is recognized. That's the best case scenario. And every show is somewhat different. Is it a spectacle? Is it cinematic? Is it something you've never seen before? Is it a performer who we think has a voice you haven't seen before? Does it feel like other places aren't doing this? That gets harder to do because there's a lot of places doing good shows, but we kind of go through that process, but it kind of has to be iterative process. And by that I mean, a show like Euphoria, that was a very specific choice to do a show set in high school. That's not something that I would say would have typically done, because the idea was always, well, it's the male head of the household who pays for cable, we should be appealing to males. That was a very old school, decades ago. But that kind of translated to also to like who the stars were. And the idea was a show that young, or that young skewing, does that feel like an HBO show? Now, I think the difference there is you had Sam, who's the auteur, and what he wanted to talk about high school students coming from his own experience with addiction. That, to me, is what makes it an HBO show. That's not just a show set in high school, but it's a show about high school students, but in particular dealing with a really, really difficult problem of addiction and how do you make your life work when you're struggling with this. And clearly comes from Sam's own experience. To me, that's what makes that an HBO show and not your run-of-the-mill high school show.
What was that?
I said I'm headed.
We'll get cuts way before they go on air, sometimes a year in advance, depending on how big the show is. And when those cuts show up on my system called Picks, where you get all these cuts, and I go, I can't wait to watch that. Usually it's because I'm engaged in the character journey, or I'm lost in a world, like Last of Us or House of the Dragon. They're these big worlds. We're asking people to spend 8 to 10 hours with us, and if we're not feeling that, I don't know why a subscriber would.